I want to be forever young.
Today is April 12th, 2020. I'm Brent Nally, and I'm really excited to be speaking with Roger Ver again. Roger, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Brent. I enjoyed our last conversation as well.
Definitely. And so everybody check out the show notes and the link below in the description of this YouTube video, because I'll have extensive show notes. And you might want to go ahead and watch the first interview that I did with Roger in late December 2019, where we focused on longevity primarily. We talked a little bit about voluntaryism. We talked a little bit about Bitcoin Cash, but we majorly focused on longevity, the science of it. And I am kind of a super fan of Roger's. I've watched pretty much every YouTube interview I've found of Roger over the last few years. And I watch all the Bitcoin.com videos, and I've heard Roger bring up, longevity and his interest in that a few times. So that's what kind of made me reach out to him, because I interview longevity thought leaders on my YouTube channel primarily. And we had a good conversation and found out that Roger is actually investing in a stem cell company in Antigua that's starting up. So hopefully, Roger, we can talk about that, maybe get a little bit of update here. I had mesenchymal stem cells injected in me in Mexico in late December 2018. And it's benefited me tremendously, I believe. And Roger, I know that you've done that as well. Not at the same location. I believe you went to Dr. Neil Reardon's clinic in Panama. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are your feelings on that? How do you feel that it's helped you or benefited you? Is it too hard to tell? What do you think?
Yeah. Right. So it's just kind of anecdotal here. So I know the day of the injection there, by 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. that day, I was just absolutely exhausted and just had to go back to the hotel and went to sleep, which is unusual for me. That never happens to me. And then the main reason I went there, actually, I had a knee injury. So I had some injected directly into my knee joint, as well as just regularly through a regular IV. So my knee's okay today. The question is it okay in part because of the stem cells, or is it okay because a couple of years have gone by now? And I don't know, to be honest, but I don't think it made anything worse. So, but you have to have, these large studies with a control group, and it's kind of hard to do that. And I want to fix my knee. I'm not interested in, waiting decades. And actually, that's another thing that was just, I was listening to David Friedman yesterday. I'm guessing you know who David Friedman is.
Yeah.
The son of Milton Friedman. Another amazing, futurologist, just fantastic, amazing guy. And he was pointing out, even right now with the coronavirus stuff, the Centers for Disease Control, previously, we're telling people, don't wear masks. You don't need to wear a mask. And that probably caused thousands of people to die because they were infected.
Recently as February or maybe even early March 2020. They changed their
position. Really recently they flip-flopped on their position. And he was talking about how that wrong position that they had initially probably caused, or almost certainly caused, thousands of people to die as a result. And if any private business did something like that and caused thousands of people to die, there'd be huge repercussions. But instead, the CDC, the only repercussion for them was that they'll probably get more money next year than they got this year, which is the exact opposite of the financial incentive that would happen with any private company that caused thousands of people to die by giving them bad advice or bad treatment. So we got sidetracked a little bit there, but
the really good point, Roger. This interview, what I wanted to talk about is, first of all, I plugged the first interview for a reason. We're going to get into longevity and how COVID-19 is specifically killing. The morbidity and mortality rates of COVID-19 are drastically higher for people with higher chronological age, but really biological age as well. And we'll talk about the difference between your biological age and chronological age. We'll get into that. Just real briefly, obviously, your chronological age is not going to change. That's the day you were born, and we can't go back in time and change that. But your biological age can be influenced, and we have many different ways to measure people's biological age. Probably the Steve Horvath clock is the most respected one at the current time. It's invented by a guy named Steve Horvath in 2012. He's a professor at UCLA, and it has to do with DNA methylation. But there's other measures, there's C-reactive proteins, there's all sorts of biomarkers in your blood, at least over 300 that are credible, and there's probably will end up being thousands of them. Telomere length is, I think, the most important one, but the problem is it's really difficult to measure the telomere length accurately. And all the telomere lengths that they do now are just in the white blood cells, which is a good marker for your white blood cells and your immune system. But every single one of the cells in your body have, telomeres in them. And so, for example, if you have great white blood cell telomere length, but you've been an alcoholic for 40 years, you could have horribly short telomeres in your liver and get liver cancer and die. So really you have to know the telomere length of every organ of the body to really understand the health. So, wow, I just went down a rabbit hole there. But essentially, we're going to talk about how this is all related. We're going to talk about voluntaryism, which again, check out the first interview linked in the description below. We're going to have you talk about that again and just how this is so important right now as people are freaking out. All the smartest people that I follow are really getting tested for if I'm going to continue to follow them or not, because, censorship going on. One thing that's relevant right now, Brian Rose is a guy who, I kind of aspire to be. The Joe Rogan, Brian Rose, Tom Bilyeu, these people have influenced me a lot. And he's getting censored right now with his David Icke interview. And regardless of what you think about David Icke, the ad hominem attacks with him just talking about lizard people or things, I just don't think censorship is okay. This is something that you talk about all the time, Roger. And it's happening and it's speeding up. And, if YouTube wants to censor this interview or any interviews, then they have the right to do that. They're a private company, but we as individuals also have the right to speak out and change our platforms to something else. So those are the things that I kind of wanted to get in today. And then I also wanted to plug your most recent interview on Bitcoin.com from today, April 12th, which, Roger, can you share with us a little bit about that and the story behind your interest there?
Yeah, so it's kind of hard for me to believe that the last 7 years went by that quickly, but about 7 years ago, I donated over $1 million worth of Bitcoin to the Foundation for Economic Education. So that was back in 2013, I made that donation. And I made that donation to them because as a young man, I wound up with a subscription to their newsletter. This is kind of back before the days of the internet. And so this was a physical, like booklet magazine type thing. It was too small to be called a magazine, but it was longer than a letter. So it was a booklet they'd mail out every month called the Friedman. And it had all sorts of really interesting articles in there. And it really shaped my view of the world and helped me understand economics better and helped me understand the origin of money better. And so I attribute to the Foundation for Economic Education a large portion of the reason why I was able to understand and appreciate Bitcoin so much earlier than just about everybody else. So back while everybody else was laughing at it and saying, oh, stupid internet money, I was there saying, no, look at this. This is one of the most important inventions ever. And so that's why I chose them to make that, donation of over $1 million worth of Bitcoin. It was over 1,000 Bitcoin. It was 1,000 Bitcoin, which today would be worth somewhere in the ballpark of like $8 million, $7.5 million today. But I still appreciate them. And in fact, I just emailed them the other day because I noticed they hadn't updated their website. They were only accepting the BTC version of Bitcoin on their website for donations. And I mailed them and I said, hey, I'm the guy who sent you guys over $1 million worth previously. The cryptocurrency vision that had me so excited back then in 2013 when I made that donation, it's no longer called Bitcoin. Today it's called Bitcoin Cash. So I would like you guys to add Bitcoin Cash to your website so that people can send you Bitcoin Cash donations. And then they replied within, I think, like half an hour, really quickly. And they said, okay, it's already live on the website. Not only did they put their Bitcoin Cash donation on the website, they actually put it ahead of the BTC version of Bitcoin donation address on the website. And you can donate whichever one you want over there, but it's interesting that they'll receive more of the money that you send them if you send it to them in Bitcoin Cash because the transaction fees are lower and the transactions are more reliable. And that's, there's countless other videos I've made on that topic out there.
And faster, yeah.
Yeah, but if you want to know the simple details, Bitcoin Cash is faster, cheaper, and more reliable than what everybody's calling Bitcoin today. So Bitcoin has the name recognition and brand and network effect that were built up by people like me, but the actual technology that has the ability to bring more economic freedom to the world and therefore increase people's lifespans and make everybody's life better all over the world. Bitcoin Cash has that technology. BTC version of Bitcoin has been morphed into some, I feel like a bunch of statists that support censorship basically hijacked the project and are still engaging in their censorship to this very day because they see it as a way for them to get rich and get more fiat later, whereas I see this as a tool to bring more economic freedom to the entire world by disempowering government's ability to be able to control people. And in fact, on a related note, but from a totally separate path, just earlier today, or actually he sent to me yesterday, but I had time to read it today, another guy that's doing research on me in regards to in regards to his, he's doing a article on me, or a book of some sort on me, about my involvement in Bitcoin. But he looked up, my grandfather was writing articles for the Freeman, and this great quote he has here is just right in line with what's going on today. And let me pull it up here. I should have had it ready in advance, but
no problem.
yeah.
Well, while you're pulling that up, I'll just say that the Foundation for Economic Education is only something that I've heard about from you and in other interviews, and it's fantastic that you've donated to them. And honestly, that's how I've chosen to follow specific people. You know, it's their track record is really important. And regardless of what you think about Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash, you know, it just shows that story you just told, Roger. There's a few takeaways for me. It's take action, right? Go ahead and notify people you reached out to them, and boom, they immediately change. So it might not have been something they were nefariously or unintentionally doing by only accepting BTC. It just might not have been thinking about it. And now they're accepting Bitcoin Cash. You let them know how you feel. And so that's hopefully what I'm trying to do, and what you're doing every day by making YouTube videos and other forms of content on social media, just to get people to think. And the future is not set. We don't know. We're creators. We're all trying to create the future. And we don't know if BCH is going to go to the moon or tank, or BTC will. We're trying to get the ideas out there and let people know the facts and let people make their own decisions. And I'm the guy on like every Bitcoin.com video that says BCH for the win. And that's because I'm trying to get people to think about, like, this is something that I want to happen, but I don't know that it's going to happen. And
if we see a better tool, we'll switch to a better tool. Just like
Right.
Today, there's certain supplements that we think, oh, this probably helps extend my lifespan. But if even a better set of supplements come out tomorrow, or a different treatment, we'll switch and start using that treatment, or we'll use that to complement the existing treatments. And the same is true with cryptocurrencies. Yeah, and I see some of your supplements there.
These are two telomerase activators I take. They're extremely weak. This is, according to Dr. Bill Andrews, the guy who literally he led the team that found telomerase enzyme in humans in the mid-90s in Geron Corporation. This is a 14% activation of telomerase enzyme. We want 100%, you know. I'm not just going to be, it's the same thing with all technology, Bitcoin Cash. Like, it should be getting better. We shouldn't just be stuck in our ways. And this is something you say all the time. And I feel like it does get lost on the Bitcoin maximalists, people who don't understand Moore's law. I mean, I sold enterprise data storage for 3 years. I know your memory.
And even in just 3 years, I'm sure you saw a huge amount of improvement.
And it's a completely different world now, because I did that from 2010 to 2013. So as more time ticks along, the 1 megabyte block limit is going to just be more and more ridiculous.
Seems sillier and sillier.
Sillier and sillier. And hey, before I forget, I didn't mean to cut you off, but today is Easter. So happy Easter to everybody. And since I'm talking with somebody who they call Bitcoin Jesus, there's my Bitcoin Jesus I pulled out of the closet t-shirt.
So the real question is, did you pay for that t-shirt with cryptocurrency?
I did not, actually. I paid for it on Amazon in 2017, and they did not have an option for it. They still don't. I should have used purse.io. So check the description below in the show notes for a link to purse.io, which is
You could have saved 20% off every purchase from Amazon, and that's some substantial savings as well.
I could have. I knew about purse.io back then. However, I wasn't using it, and I am now. So it's a great website. You can buy anything on Amazon if you're willing to wait a little bit longer, most of the time. But you can get a substantial discount. You know, any discount helps, but if you're buying something more expensive, it's obviously better to save more money.
And the shirt I'm wearing here, it doesn't have a Bitcoin logo on the shirt, but I paid with Bitcoin Cash using purse.io from Amazon. Same with the shorts that I'm wearing. Same with most of the stuff in my house. I buy it on purse.io from Amazon. It's such a fantastic tool. But I did pull up that quote, and it just seems so interesting with everything that's happening with the coronavirus now, and governments trying to control everything in terms of normal business and healthcare. And this is a quote from my grandfather from 1967. And it just seems so, and I just, read it this morning. I never heard it before this morning, but it says, the only difference between a government official and any private citizen is the fact that the government official, in effect, carries a club. How much healthcare can be provided by clubs? And I think that applies so clearly with this coronavirus thing. Like, the only tool that government has is coercion. How much healthcare can you provide with coercion? And I think we need to take a moment and think about that. Like, government doesn't have any resources of its own. It only has it after it uses its proverbial club to take it from someone else first. And so where would we be in a world today in which the private businesses, think about how much money could be made here finding a cure for the coronavirus, right? There's a huge incentive. And in fact, there's another company that I invested in that was doing, genetic sequencing and stuff like that. And they basically diverted totally away from that. And they're working on this coronavirus stuff now because they see the financial incentive to do that. And I'm sure they're not the only ones. And then back before, I was involved in cryptocurrency, I was selling these networking equipment parts, and a lot of them were made by these factories in China. I've had a bunch of them email me over the last couple of weeks saying that they've retooled their factory. Instead of producing fiber optic transceivers or whatever computer parts, they're now making face masks, or they're now making ventilators. Do I want to buy them and become a distributor for these face masks and ventilators and that sort of thing? And it's amazing how important the pricing system is. And if you don't allow the prices to change around the world, that it blocks that signal to the world of what things need to be produced. Because right now, the price of face masks and ventilators has gone up. That the fact that the price went up tells the entire world, hey, we need to produce more face masks and ventilators. Whereas if the government had imposed price controls on face masks and ventilators and said the price isn't allowed to change, that signal would have been blocked. And all these factories that used to be producing, networking equipment, they'd still be producing networking equipment. They wouldn't have received that signal that, hey, they should switch to making face masks or ventilators. And so that's why supporting the free market and being opposed to price controls and capital controls and all these things, it helps make the world a better place for everybody. And, government, all they have is a club. How much of whatever it is that you want can you produce with a club? And I thought that was such a great quote, and interesting that it came from my grandfather, because it sounds like something that these other intellectual heroes like Murray Rothbard or David Friedman and these other guys would say. But it was from my own grandfather, so it felt extra special.
Definitely. And another great mind that I've been turned on to primarily from you is Henry Hazlitt, and his book that he wrote in 1946 called Economics in One Lesson. You've mentioned this book probably literally hundreds of times in interviews and videos that I've seen. I read the book in early 2018, and it's such an easy read, and a few things stuck out to me. It's 1946, and not much has changed as far as economic law, and in fact, probably nothing. However, these ideas in the book are not well understood by even people who call themselves economists nowadays, because the whole economics field has kind of been hijacked by Keynesian economics, which is, of course, John Maynard Keynes, and it's not more traditional Austrian economics. And so the pricing mechanism that you were just talking about gets skewed so much by all these sorts of little interventions and crafty little things that governments can do with their power. And there's a chapter for each one in the book, Economics in One Lesson, about subsidies and tariffs. And really, the net, I can kind of sum up the whole book right now. Pricing mechanism is the most important thing. Money is like a language, is what Naval Ravikant says. And if you're destroying that language, then we can't communicate effectively. And you destroy it by using things like subsidies and tariffs to give political favors to specific people. So this is politics. Politics is hijacking and destroying everything. And it's just really unfortunate that we have so many people who I respect in so many ways, especially in the longevity community that I'm in, because people who are in longevity tend to be more compassionate people who are thinking more about, taking care of people, and they've kind of devoted their whole life to, I interview a lot of PhDs and doctors and things like that. So they've devoted their whole life to taking care of people, and they put people before themselves. So unfortunately, they've kind of fallen more into this socialism trap. They haven't studied enough history and economics to understand the damage that those ideas really do. And so that's why I'm hoping some of my audience might be watching this interview and thinking a little bit about, the power of free market economics. And Roger, I'd love for you to share.
To sum it up, yeah, we have to judge the actions on their results, not their intentions. And we see that, so many times, I'm sure lots of these socialists or lots of these advocates, I'm sure Bernie Sanders has good intentions. But if you look at what the results are of any time the sort of policies he advocates get enacted, the results are horrible. The results are death and destruction and starvation. And so we have to judge these intentions. We have to judge them based on the results, not the intentions, and that's a big thing. I saw it firsthand. There's several medical schools here in St. Kitts, and I was waiting at a local restaurant, a takeout place, for the food to come, and I was chatting with another guy there, and he said he's a researcher or a doctor or something at one of the medical schools here, And then he asked, what do I do? I said, oh, I'm involved in Bitcoin. He's like, why would anybody ever use that? So of course I told him about purse.io, how he can save 20% on Amazon. And he just thought that that was the worst thing ever, and that it was horrible because and in his mind, it was this zero-sum game. If you're getting a discount, somebody else is losing out. And I said, no. He said, actually what he said initially said, that should be illegal. People shouldn't be allowed to do that. And I said, why should people not be allowed to do that? And he's like, well, you're taking advantage of somebody. Somebody's selling their Amazon credit at a discount, so you're basically stealing from them. I said, no. Anytime anybody engages in any sort of voluntary trade, both people are better off after the trade, otherwise the exchange wouldn't happen. And so by you blocking the possibility of the exchange happening, you're taking away that beneficial option from that person. And I could see the look in his eyes, and like it, because it's so clear, like if in a voluntary exchange, both people are better off, otherwise the exchange won't happen. The logic is clear, but you could see on his face the emotions that he had inside of him because he really, really didn't like it. And instead of coming up with any sort of like reason why a voluntary exchange should be blocked, he just turned around and stopped talking to me and went somewhere else. And
right.
I wish you would keep a more open mind. And I don't know, where that guy is or what he's up to.
The cognitive dissonance in his brain just made him get super angry, right? Whenever people get emotionally upset, then you know that there's, probably in this scenario, I'm sure there's some cognitive dissonance going on, right?
I think there clearly was. It was visible right there on his face too. So,
yeah.
But you're right, though. It's disappointing to see some of the people in the medical field advocating for policies that lead to bad results just because they're not aware of it, right? They have good intentions with the policies that they're advocating, but you have to base it on the results, not the intentions.
Yeah, and another thing that comes to mind for me there, Roger, I'm going to link this in the description below. Roger, I'd even really suggest you watch this. It's 3.5 hours, but this is a compilation of podcasts that Naval Ravikant has done. It's called How to Get Rich Without Getting Lucky, and he put it on his YouTube channel. It originally was a tweet storm that he did over many tweets, and it really is how to get rich without getting lucky. And he lays out so many important concepts in this. I've listened to this 3.5 hour YouTube video 3 times. I listened to it again about 10 days ago. And one of the things that he points out is that wealth creation is not a zero-sum game. It's a positive-sum game. This is something that gets lost on a lot of people who haven't thought about this. Whereas social signaling or social status in politics is a zero-sum game. And sports is a zero-sum game. Somebody has to win, and that means there has to be other losers by definition. Only one person's going to be president of the US, or most countries are set up that way. And so that means everybody else has to lose. And if you think about everything in life is about the incentive structure of the system. And if you have an incentive structure where there's one winner and everybody else losing, of course there's going to be fighting and there's going to be name calling. There's going to be incentive for people to put other people down. But wealth creation, in other words, free market capitalism, is not that way. Yes, you have competition, but just because I live in a nice house doesn't mean everybody can't live in a nice house.
That's right. New wealth is created every day that didn't previously exist. And just because Bill Gates has $1 zillion doesn't mean that you and I can't have $1 zillion worth of wealth as well. And it's another, when I say dollars, that represents the wealth that it can buy. Like dollars aren't wealth, right? It's the actual goods and services out there in the economy. And so like if printing more money could make everybody wealthier, why has anybody ever been poor? It doesn't, right? We need actual people to be out there and write the software, build the houses, build the cars, provide medical care, grow the food. That's the stuff that actually makes the real wealth. But fantastic point that you're relaying from Naval there is that though the economy is not a zero-sum game, it's a constantly growing pie there that everybody can have a bigger and bigger piece of as we grow that pie.
And Naval is a guy who I've followed for many years, and he says, be careful who you follow. And this really has stuck with me. It's a big reason why, you're the main person I follow in cryptocurrency, because things matter, actions matter, and ethics matter. And you're always willing to put your reputation on the line when, like the latest Peter McCormick, that Twitter message he sent you in the video that you sent, it's just, wow, he's a crazy person, in my opinion, with the kind of horrible things that he said. And, this time more than ever, it's this crisis of this pandemic of COVID-19 has really allowed me to see different sides of people that, and it hasn't been good for most people, but the ones that people are representing themselves in manners that I respect, I've really elevated them, even higher in my follow list in my own brain of like people that I'm putting my time and energy and effort to listen to what they say on YouTube or Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever social media you follow. And so I really want everybody to audit their own thoughts and really think about that. Like who is stepping up right now and was kind of prepared for this pandemic and prepared in more ways than one, you know? And I don't mean just having enough toilet paper in your house. I mean, you know, actually prepared with the right type of ideas and mindset to navigate this landscape and this crazy environment that we're in. And I think that I've been well prepared. People have been asking us like, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing fine. And I think, Roger, you're doing okay. Obviously, we're all disrupted by this environment, but I can keep on ticking on, and it seems like you have as well too. So on that note, how is Bitcoin.com? You know, you're the chairman and former CEO of Bitcoin.com. How has Bitcoin.com been affected by COVID-19? Obviously, you're not in Tokyo. It's difficult to travel, but can you share with us how you guys are doing?
Yeah, it didn't really have any effect whatsoever. So it's kind of strange, though, in the media, one person says something, then everybody piles on and says the same thing, and nobody bothers to fact check what the first person said. And so we saw that recently, like in the news, there's like Bitcoin.com is laying off, you know, half their workforce because of coronavirus and this and that. And it's like, I released the exact numbers like over the last couple of years. So like from a year ago to today, we're within like 7 people. I think we had like 80 something people a year ago. Now we have like high 70 something people like at the moment. So like, it's just a bunch of fun. And then we have even more people now than we did 2 years ago, and significantly more than we had 3 years ago. So things are going just fine. We did have like a company shake up here a couple of days ago. Stefan Rust is no longer the CEO at Bitcoin.com, but all of that and the restructuring had nothing to do with the coronavirus whatsoever. And it was something that had been in the works for months and months in advance. It's not like it was something that just came out of the blue. And you know, bad news sells, or sensational news sells, and the news media organizations within cryptocurrency are starting to seem to be almost as bad as the traditional news media, which maybe is a sign that cryptocurrency is entering the mainstream if the crypto news media is as bad as the traditional mainstream media. So yeah, everything's going great though. We've released our Bitcoin Cash Register app a while ago. There's a major update for that that's almost ready. We just launched gifts.bitcoin.com, which makes it super, super easy to give anybody Bitcoin Cash that hasn't ever had it ever before. That's something that's no longer possible to do on the BTC version of Bitcoin because of the high fees. Our wallet's getting better and better. We just had a fundraiser. We raised over $50,000 from the general crypto public to pay for a security audit on Cash Fusion, which will give Bitcoin Cash transactions. They'll make it basically just as private as any of the most other private cryptocurrency coins out there. The number of potential mathematical possibilities of your coins being mixed with somebody else's are more than the number of atoms in the entire universe, right? So any of these yeah, that sounds pretty safe, right? Any of these blockchain analytics companies that are trying to spy on you with that, like it's more atoms than the total number of atoms in the entire universe. Like you're good to go at that point. And so like, long story short, we're making awesome progress of building the tools to enable more economic freedom around the world and put people in control of their own finances, their own lives, and give the ability for people to say no to the other people that want to use clubs against them to get their money and control them and tell them what to do. And that's been my goal from day one. I was initially doing that with what was called Bitcoin. Today I'm doing that with Bitcoin Cash because I think Bitcoin Cash is a better tool today. And tomorrow, if I thought a different cryptocurrency was a better tool to achieve that goal, I'd be promoting that cryptocurrency. So I've never, ever, ever been this maximalist mindset where like, oh, it has to be this one. Everybody should use this one. And everybody that's not using that one, I'm going to be super rude and belligerent towards them to try and force them to use this one. The only motivation those people would have for doing that, rather than just switching to the better cryptocurrency, is if they're just trying to pump that particular cryptocurrency to get rich off of it. If they were genuinely trying to make the world a better place, they'd switch to whatever tool is the most useful. And if they were smart investors, they'd still switch to whatever tool is most useful, because you switch before everybody else's switches, and then you make money. You go, I don't know if it was Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or some famous investor said, like, you go to where the ball is going to be, not to where it is currently.
Warren Buffett. I've watched a lot of Warren Buffett over the years, and I think that was Warren Buffett.
And it's so true. So like, you look at the cryptocurrency ecosystem out there right now, you go to where the ball is going to be, not to where the ball is today. And the ball today is at BTC, clearly. But the ball in the future looks like it's going to be places like Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, I think those are the two big leaders. Maybe Ripple out there, and then maybe there's some dark horses that I'm not aware of out there too. But you go to where the ball is going to be, not where it is today. And if you look at the user experience that BTC provides to people, that's not where the ball is going to be in the future. So.
And on the note that I was talking about before with be careful who you follow, Tim Draper is, has an incredible track record. For those that don't know, Tim Draper is a third generation venture capitalist, and now his son and daughter, fourth generation venture capitalists. Tim Draper has an extremely successful background in investing. He was an angel investor in Hotmail, Skype. We're using Zoom right now, but I still use Skype all the time. Robinhood, Coinbase, he bought a lot of Bitcoin in 2013 in that government auction, which he's pretty famous for. And I try to watch all his interviews as well on YouTube. And I watched one in December where the interviewer asked him, hey, what other cryptocurrencies are you most excited or interested in? I think it's the language you use. Fact check me on that. They said something along the lines of, what other cryptocurrencies are you interested in? And he mentioned one, and he mentioned Bitcoin Cash. So I thought that was interesting, because Tim Draper is a guy who I think cares about money. I mean, he's a multi-billionaire, and he is a guy who will basically do all the things that you talked about. Focus not necessarily on the emotions or the maximalism, but focus on what really matters. And he cares about money and staying wealthy. And that's what I care about. I care about getting smarter. I care about the facts. And I want to know if I have blind spots on things. And like the facts are, try download the Bitcoin.com wallet, try Bitcoin Cash, see if it's useful to you in your life, see if it adds value. And I send people about $1 of, I'm not as wealthy as you, Roger, but whenever the conversation comes up, I get out my Bitcoin.com wallet, I tell them to download it. It takes longer to download than it does for me to actually send it to them. And the look on their face is worth well more than $1 when they see how fast it come through. I do it, I'm on Skype with people. I'm building a business with my partners in Russia right now. I sent it to him. It doesn't matter where they are in the world. You're in St. Kitts, I'm in California. It comes right through now in less than a second. And then I tell them, hey, nobody can censor this. Think about that. Nobody can stop this. No government agency, no entity on the planet can stop what we just did there. Venmo's great, PayPal's great, but they can be censored. So, and those things, you have to have a bank account. Only about 100 million people have Venmo wallets right now, to my knowledge, and they're only in America. China, Japan, Europe, they all have their own kind of systems. The great thing about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin Cash is this is global. That's something that is so obvious and simple, but I feel like it's lost on people. This is global. Think global,
The more nodes on the network, the more valuable the network becomes. The potential number of nodes on the Bitcoin Cash network is everybody on the planet. The potential number of nodes for Venmo, or at the moment, everybody in America maybe. So the network effect is so important, and cryptocurrencies, because they're global, have a giant advantage over traditional financial systems like Venmo or PayPal or Western Union or these sorts of things. And I saw that same interview with Tim Draper. That really caught my attention. That the one single currency that he named outside of Bitcoin was Bitcoin Cash. And another little related story to that too. So we have this $200 million Bitcoin Cash ecosystem fund that we put together. And initially, the first person that I wanted to help run that and be the partner for that, and I reached out to them, was Adam Draper, Tim Draper's son. So Adam Draper runs Boost VC, which is another incubator there in California. And I reached out to him and said, hey, here's what's going on. We think you would be the perfect partner for this. And his response wasn't no. His response was like, this is interesting. Let me think about it. Let me talk about it. And it took a week or two, or maybe even 3, before finally he just said, this isn't the right time for me to get involved in that. But I thought it was really interesting just how open he was to that sort of thing. And if you go and look at all the early things that Tim Draper said that he made him excited about Bitcoin and made him buy the coins from the U.S. Marshals auction and that sort of thing, he's describing Bitcoin Cash. He's not describing the roadmap for Bitcoin today. So I thought that's another real bullish sign for the future of Bitcoin Cash.
Definitely. And fact check me on this too, but I think Tim also said in that interview that it was actually his son, Adam, who got him first intrigued in Bitcoin. Because at first, Tim didn't fully understand it. Maybe this is 2011 or 12 or so. And I think it was Adam that got him intrigued. So, listen to people is the whole point. Keep that learning and growth mindset. And, in 2013, Roger, when we were talking about 2013 with the time that Tim had the auction where he acquired the Bitcoin that he did, most of the people on the planet who are now in Bitcoin were not in it then. And they probably thought, well, what's the point of this? It's stupid, it's silly, whatever. And I feel like that same name calling is going on right now in Bitcoin Cash by so many of the Bitcoin maximalists. And what you always say is, name calling is not an argument, which is totally true. And I want people to just look at the actual facts and don't regret if Bitcoin Cash goes up dramatically in the next few years. It won't surprise me personally because of all the facts that I know and the things that I've followed. Whereas to me, Bitcoin isn't as useful as it used to be. I'm not a big believer in just the digital gold thing. I think that that's an aspect of money that's important, but I think that there's other characteristics of money that are really, really important, like cash, like actual using it as a currency,
Yeah, and what I've been trying to harp on for several years now is that in order for something to be usable as a store of value, it has to have some other additional use case. And if it doesn't have some other additional use case outside of being a store of value, it won't be used as a store of value. Like, I don't think anybody can come up with a single example of something that's only used as a store of value and its only use case is a store of value and it doesn't have some other additional use case outside of that. Yet that seems to be the path that BTC is trying to go down to. And I like you said, when you were reading the Economics in One Lesson from 1946, I didn't realize it was written quite that long ago. I just assumed maybe it was written in the 60s. But
because it's so good and the language is good, it doesn't feel like 1946. It's really impressive to me when I figured that out, actually.
But as you mentioned, though, the rules and the way things work, it hasn't changed at all, right? Like, money works the same today as it did back then. It needs the same characteristics today as it needed back then. And so I think all those things that you can learn from studying the origin of money and how something comes to be used as money does apply to Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or all these things. And if you deviate too much from what's useful, people are going to stop using it. And I had that's why the reason I fought so hard for Bitcoin with the scaling wars, because I owned Bitcoin.com and had a bunch of Bitcoin, and it was definitely the front runner at that point to bring more economic freedom to the world. So I had every philosophical and financial motivation to stick with Bitcoin until it eventually succeeded in destroying its usability in business, and I no longer viewed it as the front runner to bring more economic freedom to the world. So I had to, maybe it was Wayne Gretzky actually said, you skate to where the puck's going to be rather than where it is now.
That sounds right, actually. That's Wayne Gretzky quote for sure.
But I think it applies to investing as well, though. You then move your capital to where all the other capital is going to flow in the future, not where the capital is today. And that's what I did with Bitcoin Cash.
Great. So there's tons of content of you talking about these things on YouTube. So let's shift back to, can you define voluntarism? And then we're going to tie that into COVID-19, what's going on right now in the world where billions of people are being told to stay in their home and don't go out. And this is being done by their governments, and they're using either threats of violence or physical violence to actually do this. And so can you please talk about first voluntarism?
Yeah, so voluntarism, it's actually pretty simple. It just only gets complicated when you try to apply it in the details. But the basic premise there is that each individual owns themselves, and you own your body and your life and your consciousness and your energy all belongs to you. And then out there in the state of nature, there's a bunch of things that aren't owned by anybody. And then when you take and mix your labor with something else that was previously unowned and no other human being owned it, that now becomes part of you because you've mixed your labor with something that was previously unowned. And then you now own that property that you can then trade with everybody else that wants to trade anything with you. So it's the idea that you should be able to interact with anybody else, anywhere, anyhow, with anything that's peaceful. So as long as you're not using force or fraud against somebody else, it should be just fine because your life belongs to you and their life belongs to them, and any voluntary interaction between those two people are just fine. So some examples of that where our current society doesn't like it is it's perfectly fine to have sex with somebody. It's perfectly fine to pay money to somebody. But the moment you pay somebody money to have sex with them, then suddenly people go crazy. And from a voluntarist perspective, if you don't want to have sex with somebody for money, then don't pay them any money and don't have sex with them. Into the problem. If two other people want to do that, they don't belong to you. They're not your property. Those people don't belong to you. So voluntarism is the idea that all human interaction should be on voluntary, consensual basis, or not at all. And so pretty much everybody lives their life that way all the time when they're going to the grocery store, the Starbucks, or working at a job or anything. And the only people that don't are robbers, murderers, rapists, and the government, right? Because like if you don't participate in the government plan, you go to jail. If you don't buy Starbucks coffee, nothing happens to you. And so everybody just seems to get confused when they think, oh, everybody got together and took a vote, and we've all been saying pledge allegiance to the flag for decades. So it must be okay when the government bosses us around and threatens us to do things. And that violence, for some reason, doesn't count as violence, even though if you stop to undo the brainwashing and look at it objectively, it's very clearly threats of violence against peaceful people. And if you think threatening peaceful people with violence is wrong, you therefore have to oppose the state in its actions. So that's a one or 2 minute summary of voluntarism in my book on this Sunday Easter afternoon.
Thanks, Roger. And since you brought up prostitution, I'll point out a couple things. I mean, I think everybody knows that it's kind of the oldest profession in the world. And, also they've done studies on monkeys that I've seen where if you actually...
The first thing the monkeys did when they gave them money was start doing prostitution with it. Yeah, it's exactly. So interesting.
Coins, right? And so it sounds like you've seen those. And then the other thing that's so prevalent here, which is hopefully going to be a theme for this conversation, is what you already pointed out with the Bernie Sanders example where, hey, we got to judge all these ideas based off what actually happens, not based off the intentions. And so this is what happens here when you make prostitution illegal. Well, the most poor and desperate people, they're ones who are forced into prostitution, and they're forced to be poor and desperate normally from these socialistic, horrible, type of ideas of making certain things illegal, not allowing people to be free. So then you have police officers normally in inner cities preying on, the poor and the weak who are forced to go into prostitution because they have no other skills and labors because of the whole economic situation where, the minimum wage has been raised so high where they can't get in the job market, and the whole basically criminal justice system where they might not be able to get jobs because they might already have a record. Whereas at the same time, you have in the elite society and the multimillionaire and billionaire society, prostitution is running rampant. And we have people like Elliot Spitzer paying $10,000, an hour for high-end prostitutes. And of course, they aren't called prostitutes. They're called escorts, And so this is just one example of how the elite seem to have the laws, for all the sheeple around the world, all their subjects.
They don't apply to them themselves.
And it doesn't apply to them. And I've seen this happening, right? Let's tie it now into COVID-19. I think it was the governor of Michigan. You're not supposed to leave your house. They're shutting down small businesses. You're not supposed to even go out to get a haircut. And the governor of Michigan, I think, clearly got a haircut. And they asked, hey, why can you get it? It looks like you just got your haircut. Well, I'm the governor. I need to look good once again, it's do as I say, not as I do. And that's just a common theme that we see over and over and over with the elite. And that's not okay, right? It's telling you that they don't give a damn about you. They care about, just themselves and their own agenda. So Roger, what are your thoughts on that in these very strange times of COVID-19?
Yeah, again, I was reading some stuff written by my grandfather like 60 years ago, before I was even born. And he was, it seemed to apply so clearly to what we have today. So like, if you want to help the poor and lift people up out of poverty, the thing that's preventing that right now today is all these government interventions into the economy is making it more difficult for the poor to lift themselves up. And it's making it more difficult for the entrepreneurs and the people who already have capital to help those people. So it's just like stifling the entire world from helping the world progress. And it's just the same story, different decade. And it's decade after decade after decade. And I don't know what the solution is there other than to try and build economic systems and tools that incentivize people to run their own lives and disempower the state from being able to control people's lives and voluntary interactions. And that's what made cryptocurrency so attractive to me. Previously, I was just kind of scared to espouse these ideas at all and just kept my mouth quiet and was trying to go about my life unnoticed. And then when cryptocurrency came along, it seemed like such an incredibly powerful tool that was basically kryptonite to the state's ability to control peaceful people and control their lives. And so I knew, well, this is too important for the entire world, and this is the world that I'm living in. So I need to get involved in this full time. And that's when I wound up becoming a public figure, even though I definitely didn't want that, and that was the absolute opposite of my goal. But this tool was too important for the world for me to stay quiet about it. And there was nobody else shouting about it back then. So.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of the same way when it comes to longevity stuff. I never really wanted to be famous or anything, and I'm certainly not right now. But I think that it's really important for people to understand that about 110,000 people are dying every single day from aging or age-related diseases. So that includes things like heart disease, osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, cancer, all sorts of these diseases that dramatically skyrocket up in your probability of getting them as your chronological and biological age goes higher. And people are not aware of this, and we're dumping tons of money for decades into, things like cancer and things like heart disease, whereas really it's the
Let's fix
biological
the root
age.
of the problem here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
So,
root of the problem is biological aging. So that's what I'm trying to promote these scientists who understand this and trying to get them funding. About 150,000 people die every day. So there's another 40,000 that die from other ways. I'm also an investor in Tesla because I believe in sustainable energy. Forget climate change. That doesn't even apply here. It doesn't need to be for you to be a Tesla investor, right? I mean, there's only so much oil on the planet. It will run out one day if we don't switch to sustainable energy. And also, I think Tesla has the best chance at solving the driverless car, autonomous car problem. And automobile accidents are killing about over 3,200 people per day globally, and that's an engineering problem. And I believe that the human body and aging is just an engineering problem as well, too. So these are things I'm really passionate about. And as of right now, April 12th, we have about 89,000 deaths, according to Worldometer for COVID-19. So that's not even one day of aging. And this is an age-related disease. I want to be very clear. This is killing over 95% of the people that are dying from COVID-19 are age 50 and over. And they are already immune compromised. They already have existing health conditions. So, all of our freedoms and our liberties are being infringed upon, and the whole global economy has basically come to a screeching halt over something that, in my opinion, is almost a nothing burger. Now, I want to be compassionate to the people who've been affected by this and their families and loved ones. But at the same time, I'm working my ass off every day to interview scientists and talk about 110,000 people every day dying from aging and age-related diseases. And now this little virus that's basically taking out those people who have very short life expectancies. They're already very close to death biologically. This is COVID-19 is affecting them, and the whole world is losing their minds. And for the things that I know, it's hard for me not to go crazy, because I feel like I have more of this pieces of the puzzle put together than most people. Can you share your thoughts on that, your perspective?
yeah, I think I'm of a similar mindset. So you have however many people are dying of coronavirus each day. Yeah, it's small in comparison to the total number of people that are dying around the world each day. There's so many bigger problems in the world. And if you look at the proposed cure to the coronavirus, is to basically shut down the entire world's economy. Well, that's going to cause a huge number of people to die too, right? People are
It
going to
already
lose their
has.
jobs. The suicide rates are going to go up. All sorts of crazy things. I think. More people, I had the numbers up previously. I didn't have it ready in front of me, but I think it's more people are committing suicide in Japan each day than die of the coronavirus on most days. I'd have to pull back up the numbers and check that. But
that was certainly true as of late March. I saw
yeah,
that.
the numbers are changing each day here, but the solution, the proposed cure to the coronavirus it's like poison you're telling people here, drink poison to cure your stomach ache, right? Yeah, I guess if you drink poison, your stomach ache will be gone because you have bigger problems. You're dead, right? So the proposed solutions to the coronavirus is way more of a problem for the world than the actual coronavirus itself. And it just seems maddening that the entire world has this, one size fits all solution on there. And yeah, is the coronavirus killing people? Yeah, of course. Is it a real problem? Yeah, of course. Is staying at home and having some social distancing a good idea? Sure, probably. But shutting down the entire world's economy for months and with no, end in sight, and then endless money printing on top of that, that's not helping things. That's making the problem worse. So.
Yeah, and I think Roger's point, which I agree with, is that why not let the free market and individuals and companies make that decision rather than it being forced on us with violence and threats of violence from the government for us to be forced to stay home in our homes and shut down the global economy. And just to point out the devil's advocate argument here of kind of what I just personally stated, to be fair, the virus is a virus. It is contagious. So it's not necessarily the same. You're not going to catch heart disease from somebody else. So I am sensitive to that. But still, I go back to the argument, fine, if you're worried about coronavirus for you and your family, then keep them at home, right? But the whole point is that I don't think that we need governments, forcing people to stay in their homes, and because it's a slippery slope, right? This goes on for a few days, then a few weeks, then a few months, and then it becomes a new normal. And then we get used to losing all of our freedoms, the freedoms of speech, the freedom to assemble. It's
That
even
one's gone. They're both gone to a large extent, right?
It seems taboo to even be talking about these things right now. I know that I'm going to get pushback from people in my community, and I'm going to be like, these are just things that are on my mind as a person who studied history, economics. What's the saying? I'm half Jewish. I've studied the Holocaust, quite a bit, and Hitler. I took public speaking courses. I was a communications major. You can't take a public speaking course without studying Hitler. I mean, he was very, very prominent speaker with his repetition, his use of language, his emotions. And he rose to power at a time that economically things were really, really bad in Weimar Germany. And he said, I'm the solution. I'm going to save you, basically. And the people bought into that. And, once that got built up, the saying is something along the lines of, well, they came for the Jews, but I said nothing because I was not a Jew. They came for the gays, I said nothing.
Or something,
unions, everything, whoever it was. The point is like, when they came for me, there was nobody left to take me, or there was nobody left to save me because everybody's been taken, right? And so I just want people to think about that a little bit. I don't want us, 6 more months to pass by and we're all, trapped in our homes like hamsters in a cage just because maybe a few strongly immunocompromised people who already had very short life expectancies, who are close to biological aging, taking them from whatever disease, heart disease, cancer, whatever. And people with stage 4 cancer in hospitals are getting counted as death from coronavirus because they caught coronavirus. They were close to death anyway. So I don't even believe all these statistics necessarily. And each individual government, each individual country has their own ways of testing and their metrics, and they have their own incentive structure. And think about the incentives here, people. We already talked about the incentives. If the government wants there to be more coronavirus cases test positive, that's what they're going to get. And you can see how we've laid out why there's an incentive for them to do that, because it's more money and power, political power for them once they can control you even more. So I just want, and this isn't true for every single leader of a country, every single head of state, but some of the more authoritarian dictator type countries, they definitely do think about this, and they are taking advantage of this crisis to get more power for them and less power for the individuals. So I just spoke a lot there, Roger. What are your thoughts on the things I stated?
Yeah, I thank you for summing it up so clearly too. Like this, even if staying at home and self-isolating and social distancing, even if all that's a good idea, it doesn't mean threatening peaceful people with a good to do that is a good idea, right? Don't threaten peaceful people to do things. And then if you look at the incentives again, though, too, in the private market, if a business does a bad job of serving their customers, they get less money and they go out of business, right? If they don't do a good job at providing what the customers want, that's it. They go out of business. They don't get any more money next year. If the government does a bad job of achieving whatever their goal is or serving their customers, what happens? They get even more money. It's the exact opposite incentive of the actual free market. So in the free market, the businesses that are the most successful at serving the demands of the customers get the most resources allocated. In government, it's the parts of government that do the worst job and fail the worst that get more money year after year. So it's the exact opposite, the exact wrong incentives. And I think we're seeing that here. Like, did the CDC and the World Health Organization do a good job of preventing this? Probably not. Doesn't seem like it to me. But what's going to happen? Their budget's going to be bigger than ever next year, and they're going to use their failing to do what their job was supposed to be as a justification to give them even more money under the threat of violence from peaceful people next year. Whereas if all that money wasn't extracted from people around the world in the form of taxes to pay for those things, maybe they'd be able to invest in more companies. Maybe Elon Musk is going to start a healthcare company, right? He already has his Neuralink thing. Like, who knows what other cool stuff he's going to be up to. What if people had more money to invest in new businesses like that would be able to find secure cures where you can, right away, a new virus is out. Oh, let's genetically sequence it, figure out how to make stimulate the body to make antibodies against that virus. Boom. And we can have a vaccine for a new virus, really quickly, because capital was available for that new startup to figure out how to do that hadn't been, diverted to the CDC or the World Health Organization or for some, stupid politician's, second $1 million house in Vermont or wherever Bernie has his second $1 million mansion nowadays. So you have to look at both at what's seen and what's not seen. And so what you see is, okay, there's a bunch of doctors with masks on at the World Health Organization doing press releases. But what would have happened with those time and resources and assets if it hadn't been diverted towards that? What other things would have come into existence? And we don't know. And we have to take into consideration those things. And if you look at it, though, time and time again, the countries with the least amount of command economy and central planning going on have the most innovation and results and the best things coming out for the consumers out there. So if you want the world to progress, South Korea is a better model than North Korea. West Germany was a better model than East Germany. Free markets are a better
Kim
model.
Jong-un might disagree with you because he has all the power. And that's just what I want people to think about. Clearly, South Korea is better than North Korea to all the rest of the world. But who benefits, right? North Korea leaders might disagree with you, Roger.
Maybe, but they're the minority and they're doing it using violence against their fellow man. So
yeah, I just want people to think about, clearly South Korea is better. But to some people, they're arguing, that it's not. And what are the incentives for those people? Oh, well, they get to make 30 million people or however many people are in North Korea their slaves. That doesn't seem like something that's a good reason,
And that's not to say that South Korea is perfect, though, too. A lot of people don't realize this about South Korea, right? They censor the internet in South Korea, right? If there's a website that the government doesn't like, boom, you're not allowed to access it in South Korea. And then every single young man in the entire country is forced to be a slave for several years, right? They don't call it slavery. They call it military service or something like that. But you're forced to go and work somewhere against your will. And if you don't, they'll send you to jail. And if you resist going to jail, they'll shoot you ultimately. That's kidnapping and slavery. And so every single young man in all of South Korea is kidnapped and enslaved too. So that doesn't mean South Korea is some wonderful paradise, but compared to North Korea, it's pretty darn good. But there's plenty of room for improvement in both North Korea and South Korea. Don't fool yourself thinking that, just because we're not North Korea, that means our country's perfect. No, every country has so much room for improvement.
Okay, really great points, Roger. And I just want to set the record straight on a few things that I said earlier. So regarding, Brian Rose and London Real and his interview with David Icke, that was about a week ago. I haven't watched it all yet, but I've watched about half of it. And David Icke was saying some crazy things about 5G and Elon Musk, in my opinion. I'm a huge Tesla supporter and Elon Musk supporter. I think that man is doing more than anybody to make the planet a better place for all of us, to make sustainable energy, electric cars, all of it. And I do not believe in the 5G conspiracy. I am not a physicist, but I try to listen to smart people. And I don't think that 5G is causing this virus. However, at the same time, I will defend Brian Rose and David Icke's right to free speech. And I will, if YouTube wants to censor things, then I'm okay with that as well too. YouTube is a
But we can speak out against YouTube's policy for that as well.
But we can speak out against it, right? And we can move this to this video is going to go on YouTube still because the network effects are incredible. And I have to do that because that's what people are using. However, at the same time, Roger, what are some good alternatives for video that you know of?
So BitChute is the main one that I'm aware of that's an alternative. There's some other traditional ones like Dailymotion. Actually, I saw a funny post on Reddit. So what is it? Pornhub. Somebody said that we should all just start posting normal videos on Pornhub so they don't get censored, and just start using Pornhub for all the normal videos, because we know Pornhub's not going to censor. If they allow their crazy porn, of course they'll allow, David Icke 5G coronavirus conspiracy videos too. So I thought that was a pretty interesting suggestion and a great example of thinking outside the box. Look at what tools are out there in the world. How can we use them to achieve our goals? So maybe we should post this video on Pornhub so everybody can see it there and not have to worry about it getting censored. So.
That would be interesting. That would definitely be interesting. So, Roger, you've been really...
And then it'll be good marketing, too, because you can say, go see Roger Vere's new Pornhub video. And everybody will definitely click on it to see what it's about.
That's clickbait for sure, which unfortunately, I need to get better at the clickbait stuff. I actually just try to be honest and transparent, but I know the clickbait stuff is really, really important for the algorithms nowadays with the titles. So maybe we'll think of a good clickbaity title for this video.
That would definitely be a good clickbait title. Right?
Okay, so, okay. I'll think about
Roger
that.
Vere's new Pornhub video is released or something like that.
Okay. I don't know how some of my scientific audience about that. So
But they might click to find out.
they might
Right?
click to find out, like waiting for it. When's this going to happen? Um, so Roger, I have a few other things here. So on Bitcoin.com, the news that you guys are putting out is fantastic. You know, I subscribe, I get the emails, and I just read one a few days ago. I like how you have different little paragraphs on there on the Bitcoin.com email, and then you can click if you want to read the full article. So there was one, I'll have it linked in the show notes below, that talked about potential economic catastrophes for the global real estate market. And it had some very interesting points in there. I don't know if you've even read this article, but it talked about how there are people that have 10 and maybe even more Airbnb mortgages. And in this environment right now, think about this, like hardly anybody's traveling. These people are getting crushed. And think about the ripple effects that this is going to have for the global economy. The government can do a lot, right? Especially with their endless money creation. We got to stop calling it money printing. 92% of the fiat currencies globally are digital, and it's governments are moving that to 100. So they're not printing anything. They're just typing in things on a digital ledger.
Digitally printing, yeah.
Right? Digitally printing. And so, talk about where you think that we're going here economically, and keep in mind things are changing daily. It depends on when you're watching this. Have an open mind, viewers. But Roger, as of right now, with your track record, I'd really respect and like to hear your opinion about where you think things are going.
Yeah, the short answer is I don't know. The honest answer is that I don't know. But if I look around the world, I don't see how this, they call it economic stimulus, but that's just a euphemism as well. But if you look at everything the governments are doing, they've shut down the entire world's economy. There's nothing to stimulate with all this crazy spending, right? So like, I view it as like they're kind of inspiring the entire world to eat their seed corn, right? Like you don't ever eat your seed corn because you need to be able to plant it to grow more corn the next year so you have something to eat the next year. And that's what everybody around the world is kind of happening. Like so many people aren't able to go to work. They're not able to produce things. They're just, consuming, living off their savings at the moment. But what's going to happen? And so many people were already paycheck to begin with, right? So all those people are in a world of hurt. So like I was talking with another friend of mine who's a realtor, right? And so like he's made a bunch of money. He's just fine. And so he's been, stuck at home with his family for the last couple of weeks, and he's loving it, right? He's playing with his kids and he's doing all this stuff. But he was talking about like he lives in a, fancy neighborhood, and there's the guy that comes around and does all the landscaping for all these like fancy homes, right? Like the guy that does the landscaping there probably isn't a very wealthy guy, right? Probably doesn't have a huge amount of savings. And the government literally told this guy, like, no, you're not allowed to go and mow people's lawns, right? You're not allowed to continue with your business. And like, it's one thing for my friend, okay, I'm gonna stay home for a month and I'll live off the savings that I made. And he's a friend of mine, so of course he had Bitcoin early as well, so he did fine there too. But what about this guy who just has his landscaping business that probably doesn't have a bunch of savings, and the government's now literally telling him you can't go and do that? Like, my heart goes out to this guy. What an incredibly tough situation to be in. And it's not just one guy, it's millions of people around across the country and across the world that are now stuck into that position. And so what's going to happen with that? We need to find a way to help these people, but the way to help people, right, is through actually production in the market, right? You need farmers growing the food. You need carpenters building the houses. You need automobile manufacturers manufacturing the cars. If you tell everybody to stay home and just live off your savings, what happens when everybody's savings runs out? And now the government's printing, checks and giving everybody money. Well, that doesn't mean that new goods have been produced. It's just going to be more dollars chasing the same amount of goods out there, which will have that pushes upward pressure on the price. But the fact that nobody has any money coming other than that will make people real tight with their money and scared with their money, which will push the demand for things down. So I don't know if we're going to have inflation or deflation in the short term. On some things like real estate, I think we're going to see the price, plummet. But on things like food, I think we may see the price go up a lot here. So that's just my flow of consciousness at the moment as we're recording this. And at the end of the day, we don't know for sure what's going to happen. We just have to try and predict the future as best we can with the information that we have available today. And that's what investing is, right? Every single investor is looking at the information they have today and trying to figure out what's going to happen tomorrow, and then they allocate their capital today to best meet those goals for tomorrow and the world's economy tomorrow. And hard assets, I think, are probably the way to go at the moment. Hard assets. So, and gold, I think, is a great thing to have at the moment as well. So I think as much as I would love cryptocurrency to be ready to just take over the world's economy right now, the infrastructure is not in place yet. It's not there with Bitcoin Cash yet. It certainly isn't there with BTC or Lightning Network. It's not there yet. We need to build more tools. So that's my thought.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, my landscapers came by yesterday here to do our front yard, and I was glad that they're still coming because I don't care about my front yard. I want them to continue to get paid because of the reason that you just mentioned. They're the people who probably need the money the most and need to continue to work. So that's really important. And then, the article that, I read on bitcoin.com yesterday about, the people who have 10 mortgages for Airbnbs. I mean, I can't be clear enough. These are individual people. These are not big companies.
It's not some faceless corporation or something.
Right.
It's a guy and that's his business. Yeah.
Right. And they only have so much cash if that revenue just literally stops. I mean, these people probably prepared for, hey, what was going on in their mind was, hey, it's working with one Airbnb. Now I'll do 2, 3, 4. And then next thing you know, they have 10. These people did not think about this pandemic happening, what would happen if the money went to zero. If their revenue went to zero. And I'm sure that this pandemic is going to have crazy types of ripple effects on the economy that we haven't even begin to think about. So I want everybody to be, prepared for that and think about the ramifications of the actions that we're all falling in line to, the hashtag stay home going around social media right now. Again, I get it. And I'm personally staying home because I'm personally set up on video conferencing and I'm building businesses from my home.
But you were probably staying home to begin with anyhow.
I
right?
was. And Roger, that ties me to one more thing. I have a wife and a 4-month-old child in here, our first child. And so that's another reason I'm staying home, so I can support them and take care of them. And I'm really starting to get concerned about the world that my child is going to be growing up in. On one end, you have really exciting things like, Bitcoin Cash and cryptocurrencies and the potential that those have to bring freedom and all sorts of incredible innovations to the world. You have the Teslas of the world and technology and, things like electric cars and sustainable energy. On the very end of the spectrum, when it comes to the ideas of just freedom and liberty and just the right to assemble right now that's being infringed upon, the freedom of speech.
America was founded on the slogan, give me liberty or give me death.
Yeah.
And now there's this really slight chance that you might have death, right? If you get sick, right? And because there's this slight chance that you might have death, all liberty's gone. Like, what happened to the founding principles that America was founded upon? Like, it's just really frustrating.
And, I spoke with my family about this about a week ago. My dad's 69. He's in Kentucky, born and raised. He is a corporate defense attorney. He's going to retire soon. He is Republican. He grew up Christian. My mother is born and raised. She's born in Manhattan, lived there the first 6 years of her life, raised in the North. She is Jewish. She has a master's in social work and has worked in the social work field for about 40 plus years. She identifies as a Democrat. I don't think either my mom or dad.
It's an odd couple.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't think either my mom and dad are Democrats or Republicans anymore because of the way things have gotten out of control in the last, decade plus. I call them more the Democrips and the Rebloodlicans, like Jesse Ventura, because actually they do kind of act like gangs, and they do way more damage than these tiny little gangs have ever done because they're doing it globally.
They are gangs. Yeah, they don't just act like gangs. They are gangs. They're just bigger,
Right.
more organized gangs that wear, nicer clothes and work in fancier offices than the Bloods.
And make sure they get haircuts and tell you not to get haircuts.
And if you're running a haircut business too, they're going to make sure that they get a cut of your haircut business as well. So.
Right. But I think what I was getting at is my mom would sit over here, or I guess my dad would sit over here, and my mom would sit over here at the dinner table every night and have a brother and a sister. They'd sit over there and over there. And sometimes we would go back and forth like ping pong game or something, just listening, to their different ideologies about, everything, economics, taxes, the way society should be run. But at the end of the day, they're still married and they love each other, and love conquers all. And it taught me to have a very open mind and to listen to people and make your own judgments and respectfully, disagree with people. And I just feel like that is a skill set that most people don't seem to have these days, and they could really improve upon to make the world a better place. Because the way that these social media algorithms work, the more I've been learning about this, trying to be more of a, make my YouTube channel successful, is it's just pushing everybody into their own little confirmation bias and their own little bubbles, because you can just you know, go in your bubble and continue to
Hear
believe
your
in
echo chamber.
yeah, your own echo chamber. So I hope this particular interview will bring in a type of audience that I've been building of people who maybe aren't familiar with some of these ideas. And I hope that in some way that it gets people to think a little bit differently about some of these ideas. And so I really appreciate you taking this time, Roger. There's a few other bullet points on here I really want to hit. So Liberland, do you have any updates on Liberland? And can you first actually share with the audience what that is?
Yeah, so actually Liberland had a big online conference yesterday. I don't know if you were aware of that, but all the videos will be posted online at some point, but it was a big live stream and they had such amazing people. So Ron Paul was a speaker, David Friedman, Walter Block. I mean, these are all people that had big influences upon me, and it felt kind of surreal a bit to see, you know, my name next to some of these guys there on there, but it was really neat. And they held it in this, it's a difficult world, but they built this online virtual world there, and it was really, really amazing. And each item in the world is a token on the Ethereum network, and it was a really cool thing. But I just love listening to David Friedman talk. I mean, he just has so many interesting insights, and I think he's 75. I think he said yesterday, and just wow, just so incredibly sharp there. So anyhow, what is Liberland? Liberland is a little tiny piece of land that's between Croatia and Serbia, and both Croatia and Serbia both say no, that's not our land, because if they claim that land, they lose their weakens their claim to a bigger piece of land somewhere else that both of them really do want. So there's this smart, I think he's Czechoslovakian guy named Vit with an impossible Czech last name to say, that was looking at this and saying, wait a minute, both countries are saying this land isn't theirs. No country in the entire world is claiming that this is their land. Well, I'll claim it. And he was, you know, a voluntarist libertarian type. And so he started this new country called Liberland. That's kind of one of the world's first like countries based on the ideas of voluntarism and free markets. And they're working really hard to try and get more and more recognition from other existing nation states around the world. And it's been going on for maybe 5 or 6 years now. And so myself and Bitcoin.com have been a big supporter of that for years now. We send them, you know, some Bitcoin Cash every single month to support that. And I think it's a great idea. Like all over the world, we have plenty of nation states that try and control everybody's everything. Well, let's give it a try where that's not the case, where people are actually allowed to do anything that's peaceful, and let's see what happens. And if you know, people always love to say, oh, it'll be anarchy. Well, maybe anarchy will turn out to be something wonderful, right? And if it turns out to be what, you know, people assume when they say the word anarchy, and people are, you know, doing all sorts of horrible things, and it's a horrible place to live, great. We got to try the experiment, and we got to see that it doesn't work, right? So like it's a win-win situation. Whether you support the state or you don't, you get to see the actual results of implementing a system similar to this. So I've been real excited about Liberland for a long time. They have their own currency called the Merit there. And in fact, I don't have it with me or I'd hold it up, but they've even issued real passports from the country there as well.
When did that occur? Is that something new?
No, but I got mine a couple of years ago, and I even used it to board a flight in Mexico City. So it was just fine. So anyhow, I think liberland.org is the website there.
We'll have it linked
really, really interesting
in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put a link. Yeah, we'll put a link there, and it's a really, really interesting project that I've been a fan of for a long time there, and it seems to be growing in popularity. And there in my circles, you know, David Friedman and Ron Paul and Walter Block, like those are some big names that I'm super excited to hear or listen to, and I really enjoyed it. And the fact that these people are out there participating in the Liberland conference and giving it attention, like that's a really strong, powerful sign. And you know, there were people from all over the world that were busy participating in that conference yesterday. It was really a fun time.
All right, great. Thanks for those details. I met you at Anarchapulco in 2018 in February. It's in Acapulco, Mexico, Jeff Berg's conference. And I also very briefly met the founder of Liberland. I can't pronounce his name either, but really nice guy. And I didn't get a chance to meet Ron Paul, like say anything to him. I was there and I actually recorded, and it's on my YouTube channel, part of his little speech there. But that was phenomenal to see him, because I was a Ron Paul 2012 guy and a Ron Paul 2008 guy. And
those money bombs were just so exciting for those that were around and can remember the Ron Paul money bombs. Like, yeah. I remember watching that and being so excited for those as well. And it just shows just how stacked the media can be against anything that's disruptive to the existing powers that be. And so for, you know, digital currencies, it's an uphill battle for them as well.
And also on David Friedman, I just want to say he's a super genius in my opinion. He's the son of Milton Friedman, who was a super genius. He wasn't right on everything. I think there's a few things that I and you disagree with Milton Friedman on. However, he was really smart and ahead of his time, and he lived into his 90s. And as you mentioned, David Friedman in his 70s, still really sharp. These things
He was
matter.
traveling the world. He mentioned that he was in Europe, and then he got a little bit, his son convinced him like, hey, this coronavirus looks like it might be dangerous, especially for you in your age group. So like he zipped from Europe back to his home in California. And, you know, most people that are in their 70s aren't going on worldwide speaking tours and doing that sort of thing. So it just shows whether it's good genetics or taking good care of himself or, you know, a good supplement regimen there, like he's doing something right.
And then Patrick Friedman is Milton Friedman's grandson. I'm friends with him on Facebook, have been for years. He worked at Google for many years. He started the Seasetting Institute that kind of Peter Thiel's been a big fan of, where they're trying to build an entire society in the middle of the ocean so they can kind of have their own laws and own rules. And Roger, the anarchy that you mentioned, you know, most people think of, you know, people in mass going to damage, you know, property, throwing, you know, fire bombs inside cars. But if you just Google the word anarchy, the top definition that comes up, you know, in my opinion, what I found is just rules, but no rulers. That's all it really means. And so in a sense, cryptocurrency is already anarchy. There are rules to cryptocurrency, and there are kind of rulers. There's people who have a lot more of it, but they don't get to really control the network very, very much by doing that. So don't take my words too extreme there. Of course, there's nuances and subjectivity in there, but essentially cryptocurrency is kind of like anarchic money or so. Would you somewhat agree with that?
Sure, and there's competition amongst all those different cryptocurrencies. And as my favorite economist loved to point out, Murray Rothbard would always point out that there's already anarchy amongst nations, right? So like, and that for the most part works out pretty decently well most of the time. So if there's already anarchy amongst nations, why not have some more, you know, and there's anarchy amongst the different states, right? So why not anarchy amongst the people within those different states?
Okay, so there's two major things that I want to get to here before we wrap up. So Ross Albright, I want to just Albright, sorry. Please, in the link below, everybody go there and sign up, and just Roger, your thoughts.
And for anybody that doesn't know, he was one of the most amazing entrepreneurs ever, right? So like he was one of the most successful startups ever in the history of the world. He set up the Silk Road, which allowed people to buy and sell anything that's peaceful, and made it so you didn't have to, you know, worry about getting mugged by a, you know, physical drug dealer somewhere. Because, you know, I think you said prostitution is one of the oldest professions. Well, one of the oldest recreational hobbies in the entire history of humankind has been altering people's states of consciousness, whether it's with alcohol or marijuana or mushrooms or who knows what. Like that's been going on for centuries and centuries with human beings, and it's not going to stop. The drug war hasn't stopped it one bit whatsoever. And so anyhow, this guy Ross Ulbricht figured out how to set up a website that allowed people to buy and sell anything that's peaceful on there. And he didn't just do it to make money, though. He did it very, very clear, like, hey, the Silk Road is more than just a business. He said, this is a global revolt, right? This is, you know, basically ending the war on drugs. This is a way for people to be able to do these things. And boy, when you speak out against the state, does it make them mad. They hate it when people, not only did he disobey the state, but he openly didn't buy into their philosophy that the state should be able to control everybody and everything and all of that. And so in exchange for that, they gave him life in prison. They've condemned him to die in prison. This is somebody that never, you know, stole anything from anybody. He never hurt anybody. He literally just set up a e-commerce website like eBay, except for that it would allow you to buy and sell, you know, things like marijuana and LSD and things like that. And so they've literally condemned this guy to die in prison. Because if there's one thing the state really, really hates, is its disobedience to them. I mean, think about it. Treason, right? What is treason? It's disobedience to the state or unloyalty to the state is punishable by death. They're saying that if you are disloyal to the state, we will kill you. Why is treason punishable by death, right? Like, that's just a crazy, crazy world. But if there's one thing that these government employees and politicians and government people hate, is it's disobedience and, you know, pointing out that the emperor wears no clothes, right? The state is just an organized gang of thieves and robbers writ large, and they use violence to get their way, and they're no better than the common street thug. And they hate it when people say that. And here I am saying it because it's the truth, and the truth is more important than people's feelings. And I know, you know, firsthand. So like there's government employees, government agents, government people follow me on Twitter, and they just get furious about the things that I put on Twitter. So if you want to see what these government agents are so furious about me putting on Twitter, follow my Twitter account at Roger K. Veer. And you know, I know firsthand that they're mad about my Twitter account. They've said as much. So,
Yeah,
but it doesn't
almost.
matter. The truth is the truth. And if they're mad about it, maybe they're mad about it because I'm hitting a nerve because they know it's true in their deep heart of hearts. But as Mark Twain said, something along the lines of, it's harder to get somebody to see the truth when it's almost impossible to get somebody to see the truth when their paycheck depends on not seeing it. And
Right.
that's exactly what's going on with all these government employees, is they don't want to see the truth, that they're just part of this criminal gang that's using threats of violence against peaceful people. Because if they saw that and recognized it for what it is, they'd have to quit their jobs and go and find honest work. So that's the end of my tirade for the moment.
And you also like to say, just because, you know, they're wearing costumes or something and have a flag waving in front of the building they walk in, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have, you know, power over you, or that they should, or that what they're saying is morally superior. And so another quote that I like, I think this one is attributed to Voltaire. Who knows if he actually said it, but it's something along the lines of, in order to know who rules over you, just figure out where you're not allowed to criticize. Yeah, you know that one. And that's really important. I want people to think about that, right? And right now, what are we not allowed to criticize? We're not allowed to talk about some of the things we've been talking about. Hey, is this okay that the government's just telling us we shouldn't even be leaving our house? I mean, this is just something that my dad's 69 years old, and he's never thought he would see something like this, you know, and I'm not going to be going against the government personally. I have a wife, I have a child, and I don't need to do that. Like I said, I'm set up, I'm fine here. But I am worried about the long-term ramifications of this, especially if this, you know, stay-at-home type measures continue too much longer. But yeah, so definitely follow Roger on Twitter. He's got currently almost 600,000 followers, 597,800 as I'm looking at it right now. Follow Roger on all the social media. Subscribe to his personal YouTube channel and the Bitcoin.com channel. The links are going to be in the description below. And what's really important that I've been trying to work smarter on YouTube rather than harder is actually subscribe, but also click that bell and then click all on the bell to get all notifications. If you really want to,
making it harder and harder to get notified, aren't they?
Yeah, but I've looked into this, Roger. It's so important for the algorithms. It goes into, like, if you have over 10% of your subscription audience that has all, then your algorithm for YouTube, it's going to feed your information higher in the filter to other people. If you're over 20%, you know, there's these metrics that YouTube has. So I've been trying to learn more about all this, because we got to work smarter, right? And
another thing that I learned, and I thought I was doing people a favor, I always had the monetization turned off for the videos. But if you have it turned off, maybe was it you that told me this? But somebody pointed out to me.
And I was so frustrated to even learn this, and I had to reach out and tell you this because I care about you and the message you're getting out. I don't want to have the monetization turned on, but so you know, I'm only doing this.
You want to reach the people.
Yeah. The algorithm destroys you if you don't have monetization turned on. And think about it. If you understand YouTube's business model, it makes perfect sense. AdSense is a separate company. They're the ones that are paying YouTube for the ads, and then they're the ones that pay you, the YouTube content creators, for the ads. And so this is how essentially we all make money.
You say, I don't want ads. Well, why do they need to promote your video? They don't make any money. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what's been going on for a number of years is YouTube, officially, the CEO and all the directors, they say, no, it's not true. But I've listened to very smart YouTubers. I've watched videos on it. I've read articles. And then I ran my own tests on my own channel and a few other YouTube channels with it off and on. Very simple things like BrentNally, Roger Veer. The video wasn't even coming up when you typed into YouTube. I turn on ads, all of a sudden it's a top 10 hit. So and I ran multiple tests. It is true. And so, sorry audience, but that's why the ads are turned on. I don't really care about the money. It's not much money I'm making right now anyways. It's pennies.
And one of the best, I think it's $10 a month or something, but I did subscribe to the YouTube premium thing, and I don't ever have to see any ads on YouTube at all. Like, probably the only thing that I can think of that I like spending more was on a side note, is you can buy a lie detector app for $1 in the App Store, and we were the group of friends. I hope they don't see this. One of them was Stanford MBA, and she was fooled thinking that this app was a real lie detector app. And me and my other buddies, all the guys knew that it was fake, but all the girls thought it was real. And it was one of the best $1 I've ever spent my entire life for that app. But other than that, I think the $10 to get rid of all the ads on YouTube is a fantastic bargain as well, because there's just so much amazing content on YouTube as well. So.
Definitely. And Roger, you hit upon a good point there as well too. Like our world's changing so much. Elon Musk doesn't even care if you went to college. He doesn't even care if you have a high school degree. He cares about your track record of success. And he believes that if you have a successful track record, then you're most likely to continue to have a strong track record in the future of success. And that's how I tend to think. And I worked at LinkedIn in sales, and I had people setting meetings for me, like SDRs, sales development representatives. And a lot of these kids were graduates at Harvard and Stanford and things like that. And they were like smart kids, but they were like 22, 23, and they didn't have much business experience. So I just want people to understand that just because you have an MBA from Stanford or this or that doesn't mean you're a genius, as you just kind of pointed out. And let's focus on connecting with people and building a strong network of people who actually have a strong background and a track record of success. I think that that's really important. And I think that your track record of success is super, super strong. And just like people were telling you that you were crazy in 2011, 12, 13 for investing in Bitcoin, and now they wish like, oh man, I should have listened to Roger. I personally believe the same thing is going to happen with Bitcoin Cash right now. All the trolls saying be cash, be trash, what all this stuff. I personally believe
it's not an argument.
Yeah, I personally believe it's going to happen again, but time will only be the judge of that. And that's why I'm holding my Bitcoin Cash and try to spend it when it makes the most sense for me. When it's fast, easy, and cheap, and it's a good deal, I spend my Bitcoin Cash. So Roger,
great way to sum it up there, I think.
Yeah, Roger, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Are there any final thoughts that you want to share or leave the audience with?
Yeah, and if you want to live forever, the best way to do that is to build the technology that enables people to live forever. The best way to build new technology that can enable that is through economic growth for the entire world. The best tools to enable more economic growth for the entire world are cryptocurrencies and getting people to use that around the world. So if you want to live forever, start using your Bitcoin Cash today, or any digital currency for that matter. That's the best tool we have. If you're not the actual scientist that's doing the research and development yourself, start spreading Bitcoin Cash or digital currencies.
All right, perfect. I've tried, instead of saying forever, I try to say, let's extend our health span and lifespan as much as science will possibly allow. Because the forever language, sometimes, I know what you meant, and I'm sure everybody does, but sometimes.
Yeah, the average lifespan would wind up being what, maybe 10,000 years before you die in some sort of, big accident or something like that, where they can't fix whatever the problem was, which is still a lot better than 80 years. Yeah.
I'll take 10,000 years for sure. I want to plug one more thing. Last night, I did my first interview as a volunteer for a YouTube channel called Leaf, or lifespan.io. And it's a great nonprofit that's doing great work to promote longevity science. And so I'm just doing long form interviews. Yesterday, I interviewed Dr. Alex Zavaronkov, the CEO and founder of In Silico Medicine. I'll have a link to the description below there as well. And Roger, I just really, really appreciate your time and everything that you're continuing to do. I really want to give you the last word. And can you give any update on your stem cell company you're investing in Antigua? Anything you can share publicly?
Yeah, the building's built. A bunch of doctors were hired. They were trying to find a big enough supply of the stem cells to open everything, and then coronavirus came. So everything's on hold in the whole world, right? So we'll have to see what happens when the coronavirus lockdown ends, and hopefully we'll be ready right away as soon as that's over. So, and you'll be able to pay in Bitcoin Cash there, I'm sure, as well.
Oh, you'll make sure of that, I'm sure. All right, Roger. Well, thanks so much, and thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Brent.